that you're doing well, that you're enjoying the time, and that you want to learn something more before bed. So as we do this, we are going to list through some a couple of pages to our awareness now and then to think about the chapter that we are on. And we are on chapter 7 about editing. And as we talked before, everything is in the power of perception, so that we can change our consciousness because we, we until now learned about who we are and what we are. And I want to read this chapter firstly, and then I want to comment the chapter. Um, and I really want you to take a few minutes to think about what I'm reading and to consider this because I want you to understand that uh, finalizing and realizing what you really want and who you really are comes from inside of you. And that if you know who you are and where you are going, um, everything will come to you what you want. But to solve things before, you need to accept them and you need to change your way of thinking about them so that you can make them good and pleasant and in the nice relationship to stay in a nice relationship with these things, but open for new things that you really wanted and that you really created for yourself. We usually forget that we are growing and that we cannot grow constantly with others as we wanted to, so we change and new people come. I'm talking about people, but this is also stuff and things like that come in your lives, and you have to adapt that, and it's hard to adapt if you're stuck in the past. And this is really nice, a nice chapter that is going to talk about these assumptions and imagination and attitude at the end. Okay, so let's read it and then we can comment it. So sorry, it's all about attitude. um, Experiments recently conducted by Mary Lawrence and Albert Ames in the latter's psychology laboratory at Hanover prove that what you see when you look at something depends not so much on what is there as on the assumption you make when you look. Since what we believe to be the real physical world is actually only an assumptive world, it is not surprising that these experiments prove that what appears to be solid reality is actually the result of expectations or assumptions. Your assumptions determine not only what you see, but also what you do, for they govern all your conscious or subconscious movements towards the fulfillment of themselves. Over a century ago, this truth was stated by Emerson as follows: as the world was plastic and fluid in the hands of God, so it is ever to so much of his attributes as we bring to it. To ignorance and sin it is flint. They adapt themselves to it as they may, but in proportion as a man has anything in him divine, the firmament flows before him and takes his sign at form. Your assumption is the hand of God, modeling the firmament into the image of that which you assume. The assumption of the wish fulfilled is the high tide which lifts you easily off the bar of the senses where you have so long lain stranded. It lifts the mind into prophecy in the full right sense of the word, and if you have that controlled imagination and absorbed attention which it is possible to attain, you may be sure that all your assumption implies will come to pass. When William Blake wrote, "What seems to be is to those to whom it seems to be," he was only repeating the eternal truth. There is nothing unclean of itself, but to him that estimate anything to be unclean, to him it is unclean. Because there is nothing unclean of itself or clean of itself, you should assume the best and think only of that which is lovely and of good report. It is not superior insight, but ignorance of this law of assumption. If you read into the greatness of man some lightness with which you may be familiar, or into some situation or circumstances an unfavorable conviction. Your particular relationship to another influences your assumption with respect to that other and makes you see in him that which you do see. If you can change your opinion of another, then what you know, believe of him cannot be absolutely true, but is only relatively true. The following is an actual case history illustrating how the law of assumption works. One day, a costume designer described to me her difficulties in working with a prominent theatrical producer. She was convinced that he unjustly criticized and rejected her best work, and that often he was deliberately rude and unfair to her. Upon hearing her story, I explained that if she found the other rude and unfair, it was a sure sign that she herself was wanting and that it was not the producer but herself that was in need of a new attitude. I told her that the power of this law of assumption and its particular application could be discovered only through experience, and that only by assuming that the situation was already what she wanted it to be could she prove that she could bring about the change desired. Her employer was merely bearing witness, telling her by his behavior what her concept of him was. I suggested that it was quite probable that she was carrying on conversation within in her mind which were filled with criticism and recriminations. There was no doubt but that she was mentally arguing with the producer, for others only echoed that which we whispered to them in secret. I asked her if it was not true that she talked to him mentally, and if so, what those conversations were like. She confessed that every morning on her way to the theater she told him just what she thought of him in a way she would never have dared address him in person. The intensity and force of her mental arguments with him automatically established his behavior towards her. She began to realize that all of us carry on mental conversations, but unfortunately, on most occasions, these conversations are argumentative, that we have only to observe the passerby on the street to prove this assertion. That so many people are mentally engrossed in conversation and few appear to be happy about it, but the very intensity of their feeling must lead them quickly to the unpleasant incident they themselves have mentally created, and therefore must now encounter. When she realized what she had been doing, she agreed to change her attitude and to live this law faithfully by assuming that her job was highly satisfactory and her relationship with the producer was a very happy one. To do this, she agreed that before going to sleep at night, on her way to work, and at other intervals during the day, she would imagine that he had congratulated her on her fine designs and that she in turn had thanked him for this praise and kindness. To her great delight, she soon discovered for herself that her own attitude was the cause of all that befell her. The behavior of her employer miraculously reversed itself, his attitude echoing, as it had always done, that which she had assumed now reflected her changed concept of himself. What she did was by the power of her imagination. Her persistent assumption influenced his behavior and determined his attitude towards her. With the passport of desire on the wings of a controlled imagination, she traveled into future of her own predetermined experience. Thus, we see it is not facts, but that which we create in our imagination, which shapes our lives, for most of the conflicts of the day are due to the want of a little imagination to cast the beam of our own eye. It is the exact and literal minded who live in a fiction's world. As this designer, by her controlled imagination, stirred the subtle change in her employer's mind, so can we, by the control of our own imagination and wisely direct feelings, solve our problems. By the intensity of her imagination and feeling, the designer cast a kind of an enchantment on her producer's mind and caused him to think that his generous praise originated with him. Often our most elaborate and original thoughts are determined by another. We should never be certain that it was not some woman treating in the wine press who began that subtle change in man's mind, or that the passion did not begin in the mind of some shepherd boy, lightening up his eyes for a moment before it ran up its way. William Butler Yeats. I really want to go through this chapter because I really find it very important. So, we are talking about attitude, and the attitude is all about ourselves, about the picture that we have in our mind, about what who we are and what we want and where we are going, and about our lives completely, what we work, whom we live with, and what kind of life are we taking. And I really find it important because attitude shows directly what you are living and where you are going and where you are heading. And attitude is shown on a many different levels in our lives, especially on our results. And our results can be results in the job, results in relationships, results in the some goals, achieving things, and a lot of different things. And this attitude is directly represented by our results. So in this chapter, the author is taking it for the example relationship with the person, and it's talking about importance of attitude of yourself that is going to show the another person how to treat you. And I really think that it's not about that. Don't take this chapter as a chapter that you can change someone. It's not about changing anyone else. It's about changing the attitude about yourself. What you deserve, what you want in your life, who you are, how much are you worth, and what are you tolerating. These are the things that when you set them, when you know where you are going, when you know what your goals are, when you know how your life should look like, then you change. And your change will cause another person's change, not about that person, but about her or her attitude towards you. And you can always assume the conversations you want to have, the relationships you want to have. You are not going to change the person to become what you want, but you can make not make, you can assume the conversation. You can not just conversation, but relationship and everything with that person as you want it to be, because this is going to be something that you want to consider as a possibility to build a community that you want to have, not to not just to mm, not just to like be the part of the community, but you can make your own community and become the part of it as well, because it is very important to understand that successful people always are leaning to successful people, like entrepreneurs always leaning with entrepreneurs and things like that. So also it is important, if you're growing, to be the part of the community who is successful in some kind of way, the way you want it, you see your success. And this is the assumption, making these people come to your life, as well as changing current the current communities around you, not as you want them to be, but change your attitude towards them, so that they can apply their behavior towards your attitude as you want it to be. And growing is the part of the process of change and change your consciousness, and we are here to grow. And some people will never grow with you because they are not going this way, and this is okay. But you can change your attitude towards them, let them be and let them go, and adjust to your new pet. And during this new pet, you can you can you can adjust yourself and adjust them to be the part of the pet in some kind of way if they want it to be. If not, then that is their free willing and choice. And this is all about this assumption or attitude. It's not about change of anyone else, but change of you and change of yourself and your view of yourself and what you want to be and who you want to be. And as we talked before in these lives, we talked about the importance of having a goal, setting a goal, and becoming the person who already achieved this goal. It's always um, about when you think about the goal, always thinking as this goal is already achieved, and uh, from the point of from the point of view of the person who already achieved that goal. What would you um, how would you act? Who would you be with? Who would you talk with? How would you talk with? Um, and all of these things are very important, these small things about you, so that you make this goal worthy you. Not that you are worthy of the goal, but the goal should be worthy of you. And this is the most important thing. And when you change that, you change your attitude. And with changing the attitude, you can adjust the circumstances around you as you want them to be, so that you can grow. But also not try to not changing anyone or anything, but accepting it and let it go and go for where you want to go. And everything else will adapt and adjust to that. And I think this is the most important um, thing that this chapter wants to say, that attitude really is all about you, and that you can change things with changing your attitude. And I really think that if you're going through the book Power of Awareness, that you have to stop on the chapter 7 about attitude and really reread it, and think about what this chapter wants to say. Um, and also about the importance of the power of assumption. So, yes, thank you very much for listening. And thank you very much for reading this book with me. It's so kind and nice of you. And I really find this book very important. And I really think that for everyone who wants to grow and for everyone who wants to change their lives, they should be open for new things and for new opportunities. And just enjoy the process and really learn about who they are and who they want to be. And when they learn that, then everything and everyone will come in life as they want it to be. And everything that is already there will settle as it should be. So I really encourage you to go through this chapter and really rereading it and enjoying the process. So thank you for listening and have a good evening if you're from so it's already night, almost midnight in Central Europe. And so good night and have a good evening or good afternoon from everywhere around the world. See you next time.